أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. صدق الله العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How's everyone doing today? Alhamdulillah. So first of all, I would like to say thank you to LIMS for organizing this event. It's a very important event. And also for all of you here today joining us. Jazakallah khair. And may Allah put barakah in it. Ameen. So, since our topic is a little bit controversial for some people, so I'll try to explain every step of this in 3 segments. And so things will become clear, inshallah, by the time we leave. The first segment, I'll focus on the history of Halloween and where did it start, the origin of that and everything. The second part, we'll look at the world affairs, where the world stands right now. And the third part, we'll merge both of those segments together and we'll look at what Islam talks about it. And we'll provide enough references, inshallah, to understand better. So throughout this talk, I want you to remember one word. The word is choice. We're going to make reference to that word throughout our talk, inshallah, today. Okay, so I want you to imagine a scenario. Imagine you hear a doorbell or a knock on your door. You open the door and you hear screaming kids, all dressed up in costume, colorful, and they say, trick or treat. And sure, it's like a threat. I will trick you if you don't treat me. What do? We don't want to get tricked, so we give them treats. We bring out the bag or basket of candy and we give it to them, right? And then they go away. So yes, we are talking about the Halloween night, October 31st, the night of trick or treat, where kids go houses to houses with adults or without adults, asking for offerings or treats. So we have to remember 2 factors here. 2 things are happening over here. Number 1 thing is happening is the kids going from houses to houses asking for treats with or without costume, does not matter. And the second thing is happening is we are giving them treats. Okay? So we have to ask ourselves a few things. Do they know what they're talking about? Do they know what they're asking? And the second thing, do we know the meaning of our action? Do we know what we are doing by giving them those treats? Right? Because it may sound like a very fun activity. It may sound like a harmless activity, just giving them a sweet. What difference does it make? You know, simple costume. It has no harm. But at the end of the day, do we know what Halloween represents? Do we even know the origin of that? So we're going to look at the very first segment about history of Halloween, and I'm going to divide that further into 2 separate parts. The first part, let's take a look at what is Halloween. So about 2,000 years ago, we're going on a journey 2,000 years ago right now. So 2,000 years ago, there was a group of people who belonged to a certain culture. And that culture was in Scotland, the north part of Scotland, not part of Ireland, not part of England, Wales, and also France, right? Northern part of those countries. That group of people who belonged to that northern part of those countries were called Celtic. That was a culture of Celtic. Now, Celtic is a word from Greek. And so you will also hear the pronunciation called Celtic. Celtic is a Latin pronunciation of that, or a French pronunciation as well. So some part of Europe you'll hear Celtic, some part of Europe you'll hear Celtic. In US, Celtic is more popular, so we'll stick to that definite as the pronunciation. So that part of culture, or people who followed Celtic belief, they are from the northern part of those countries that you saw in the map. What did they believe in? That their New Year is on November 1st. And so if the New Year is on November 1st, the New Year's Eve is naturally on October 31st. And so the beginning of the new year was the end of the previous year. So the end of summer, the end of harvest, the end of giving thanks to the God of the sun. And the new year would represent the beginning of winter, beginning of cold and dark nights. Okay? And that night was represented by evil and death, because you're going into the darkness of this winter. And so evil and death would represent the day of soul and the day of saints. So if we call that a day of soul or a saint, naturally, the night before that would be called what? The eve of the saint and the eve of the soul. And so October 31st, the Celtic New Year's Eve, was called the Saints' Evening or Saints' Eve, the Soul's Eve, the Holy Eve. And notice what I'm saying: Holy Eve, Hallows Eve, and later that became Halloween Eve. Okay? That was the time that they were celebrating the festival of Samhain. It's written as Samhain, but it's called Samhain. Does anyone remember, the youth in the other room, I hope the boys are there, does the word Celtic remind you of something? Yes.
Basketball?
Basketball, perfect. Which one?
The Boston Celtics.
Boston Celtic. And one more. Not too far from here, Brooklyn Celtic. So Boston Celtic is more popular than the Brooklyn Celtic, but very popular team, right? So we're not talking about NBA and basketball today, but I wanted to remind you that all came from Ireland. All of those are Irish from the northern part of that. So that festival of Samhain, or Samhain, the correct pronunciation, was a night of Samhain. And so what did they produce, right? So the belief was that the dead soul, the people who died, their soul would come back to earth. And so there was an opening on that evening, the opening that provided the world of the dead and the world of the alive people, right? The people who are survived. And so who were those souls? The souls were the people who died, who were good in nature, went to the heaven, and the people who were bad went to the hell. How about the people who had the spirit which was wicked? The wicked spirit, or people who didn't finish their business, so unfinished business, all of those souls stayed in the unseen world. And the unseen world was between the earth and the heaven, right? So during that time of the night, the opening is created, that was a belief, and those souls that are roaming in the unseen world will come back to earth to destroy crops and to terrorize people, right? So when they terrorize people, people will be scared. And so how will they manage this? They created a festival, and that was the pagan belief. Pagan, again, is a Latin word that came from paganos. Paganos would be anyone who belongs to idol worshipping, who is a non-Christian. Okay, that was the paganos, and later on pagan belief. So what do they believe on? So all of these souls are around on October 31st, destroying things, destroying crops, and scaring people away. And so what pagan priests did, pagan priests were able to communicate with these souls. Okay, that's number one. And they would light fire, because apparently the fire will scare the souls away. And people will sit around that fire in costumes of animal skin and animal head. So two things would happen at that time. If you're wearing animal head, your number one is scaring those souls away, and also disguising yourself so the soul does not recognize those people, right? And so disguising was one nature, and then scaring the soul away, and priests were able to communicate with the soul to make sure the soul does not come back. The other thing that they were doing as part of the pagan belief was they were offering food to these souls. So people will leave the food out at their doorstep. So if the food was there and the ghost or the spirits like the food, and so they will walk away, they will run away, and they will leave them alone. If there was no food, or if they did not like the food, they will cast spell. Okay? So this was a pagan belief. And then if you notice that, the costume that we have right now, right? Lighting fire we have right now. Offering food. So you offer a food, you leave it on your food step, and let the ghost come in or the spirit come in. That's exactly what's happening. We leave the candies at the door, hoping that if the kids come in, they will take it. So the same practice is being followed, right? And so that's the number one part of this Halloween. The second part of the origin, we go back to the Roman Empire. So Roman Empire started when? In 27 BC. At that time, Romans are pagans, okay? And now you have pagan belief who believed on Celtics. You all following me? Okay. So now we have Roman who are pagans, but we have pagans who actually believe in Celtic. So when Roman Empire was began in 27 BC, these pagans came to Romans and said, look, we celebrate Ghost and Spirit Day. Okay? Romans said, we celebrate idols. Those are our God. And so they tried to mix these two festivals and occasions. Okay? And so fast forward, Roman Empire became Christians. Okay, Roman Empire, Christianity actually happened in 330 CE. So Roman Empire is now Christian. And so the first thing they did, one of the very first things in Constantine Empire, one of the very first things they did was to take over a building that was called Pantheon. Pantheon was supposed to be a temple at that time. They took over that temple and they made it a cathedral church or Catholic church, okay? And the whole purpose of making that a church was to honor saints and priests. And at the same time, people who are martyrs, like we have shohadas, at that time for them was martyrs. So anyone who would die on the path of Christianity was a martyr. So they began this church, they call it All Martyrs Day, All Saints Day, and All Souls Day. Okay? So that belief dedicated towards Christianity completely. And so a few years later, they realized that, look, okay, so they were celebrating that on May 13th. When they discovered or they took over that Pantheon building and they made that church. That was May 13th. So they started off with that day of all martyrs on May 13th. So now they're celebrating on May 13th. Another celebration is going on November 1st. And then they said, you know what? We have two celebrations that kind of have the same background because it's a Souls Day, right? And so in 834 AD, Pope Gregory IV officially moved that day of May 13th to November 1st. And so when that happened, that was a combination or a hybrid belief. Why that happened? Because two holy events were going on in the same day, same year anyway. Might as well have just one holy year, okay? So it was a Saint's Day, it was a Soul Day. At this point, you remember that Soul Day or Saint Day is for the martyrs, and Soul Day is for the pagans. Pagans who are still practicing Celtic with the Spirit Day and all of that, right? So two things. So November 1st was still a saint or soul, and over here they're representing the All Martyrs Day. So one is in respect to evil spirit, because the soul is coming from the unseen world to the world, and one is in respect to the martyrs, all the shohadas, all the saints and popes, right? So honoring the saint. And so this created a hybrid of the belief. Two beliefs come together. Now, when Roman Empire is already Christian at this point, right? And so they don't want to force Christianity on pagans. So they go to pagans and they cannot say, look, now follow Christianity. That'll be a forceful religion. And so to avoid that forcedness, they say, you know what? We'll follow some of your practice and you follow some of our practice. And so one of the things that they actually end up changing was to begin praying for the dead. instead of believing that it's in the unseen world or wherever, begin praying for the dead, so the soul will go either in the hell or the heaven, right? And so for that, they sent missionaries and all of those to Celtic religious practices. And so Catholic churches became very popular, okay? More changes that happened in that scenario was people went door to door asking for offerings. So remember, around the pagan belief was the food was left at the door and hoping that the soul will come and eat that. And now they are literally going door to door asking for that offering, for that food. And they call that soul cakes, okay? And so the practice of going and asking for food is the same thing as kids go and say treat or treat, all right? So people still wore a costume in terms of the animal skin and the head. That did not change to scare the souls away. And one more thing happened. They lit the fire. Remember I just mentioned that the priests were lighting the fire because the ghost or the spirits were scared of the fire. So now they got rid of that practice, this Roman Empire, and so they used turnips or shulgam. And they will carve turnip and put candle inside it. That's the same practice of lighting fire, it's just another fire is part of the candle inside a vegetable. So when this practice reached North America, what did we change turnips into? Pumpkins, very nice. So now we have pumpkins, okay? Wait, before we go to Bible. So this was going on where? In Europe. And at that time, there were Native Americans over here. And Native Americans did not want to follow any of the practices of pagans. Okay, they did not want to be associated with the spirits, a dead soul, or any of that practices. So they were completely against that. However, in 1846, there was a potato famine. You know what potato famine is? No potatoes at all in Europe. And so it hit Europe so hard that Irish people started migrating to US. And so they brought with them Catholic religion, and then they brought with them Halloween. And so slowly, even though Native Americans did not want to celebrate any part of Halloween, slowly Halloween became commercialized. And so because who doesn't want to dress up as anyone, right? Any harmless creature or princesses or vampires or anything. And so they would buy, they would make money out of it. Carving of any fruits or vegetable became popular, right? Around all of that time. And so slowly all of that started emerging. So when you go to, for example, when you go to Costco, around Eid time, you see Eid cookies. Is Costco Muslim? No. But they will sell anything and everything to make money. The same thing. They will do anything possible to make money out of this. So Halloween kind of became a commercialized business around that time. And now let's go to a quick fact about what Christianity talks about. Does Halloween exist in Bible? What does Bible say about Christianity? There is no mention of practice like this in Bible. There is nothing that Bible talks about this. And I spent a lot of time on this side, this research, a lot of time, and then I referred to a lot of ulmas and a lot of scholars on this one, and they came up with two different, or there were actually many different places in Bible where they talked about against this kind of practices. In Jeremiah, for example, it says, learn not the way of heathens. Heathens were referring to pagans. Another place in Bible, it talks about, do not turn the mediums and seek out the spirits, for you will be defiled by them. So Bible is completely, this was not part of the original Christianity. This is actually part of the culture that has been followed down 2,000 years ago. So I purposely wanted to show this slide with references just in case you ever go into the conversation with your neighbors and with your friends. And so this is one of the areas where you can refer and say, and they know it. If you notice, people are turning away from Halloween these days. Not many people are celebrating because they understand this is a practice that has been watered down from many time ago. So let's talk about the elements of Halloween. What do they do in Halloween, right? Costume. Most of it is negative because it's vampire, it's all of those, I don't even know, whatever, right? Ghosts and all of those things. Decorations. We see a lot of decorations in the front yard of people's houses, right? Like coffin, and a hand is sticking out of that coffin, trying to scare, right? All of those, skeleton with lights and coming out of the eyes and all of that. about the children who go from houses to houses? Is it really safe to send our kids houses to houses during this time? I don't think it's safe. How about the candies that's being collected? Do we really believe the ingredients that those candies? We know what it is in the candy, right? And so remember that Rasulullah ﷺ said, the upper hand is better than the lower hand. Do we want our kids to go around and asking for food? It doesn't make any sense, right? And also remember that in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talked about the prophets that were sent with the message of Tawheed and to tell people to stop with idol worshiping, what did people turn around and told those prophets? Our forefathers used to do it, right? And so a lot of time today we have this view that people will say, so what? Why do we have to even look at the history of Halloween? It's a simple, fun activity. Why? If people do it, what harm does it give us? And the same thing, our forefathers used to do it. It is the same, right? Okay, so practice of treat or treat, we know that. So if the food is not given, a spell is cast, or children scream treat, or they're leaving food at the door. When somebody has to go out at night, you will leave the bag of candy on the doorstep, just in case those kids come in, the candy is there. Same practice, right? Jack-o'-lantern. Jack was actually a person, and was a wicked person, was a very naughty person. So there's a thing that when he died, he didn't go to hell, he didn't go to heaven. He stayed in the unseen world. And so Halloween time, he came and he started to scare people away. And so they started to put turnips and all of those things to scare his evil soul away. You see a lot of spiders and black cats and all of those things, hanging out, and the witches. So all of those are known to associate with communication with the dead souls. Okay, witches are magic. They are considered very powerful, and so a lot of adult costumes. You will see what witches, vampires. That's exactly what they are. The kids will most probably not dress up as witches. They do sometimes actually, but most of the adult costumes are around this. Skulls. Do you remember when the priest had the fire all light up and people were surrounded, and what were they wearing? Animal skin and animal head. This is what exactly it is. The skull. And we have that skull around the houses. You will see at that part of decoration in the front yard to worship and establish connection with the dead soul. All of these that they used to practice, you can see a reflection of that right now as people, how they celebrate these practices. So exactly the same thing what 2,000 years ago was happening, it's happening now. And so fire rites, instead of lighting fire, now there is a candle or a small carved pumpkin fire. You see so many houses have pumpkin. Actually, the image is blurry on the right-hand side. Those two images on the top right and the bottom right are taken from one of the festivals. It's down here on Long Island in Bethpage. All of those are carved pumpkins, and the light inside are the candles. And so much is going on over here. All right, let's talk about the second segment of today. So now you know the history of Halloween. The second segment. Anyone knows what's the world population right now? What is the world population right now? 8 billion, almost. Maybe by next week they will be. 7.98 billion. Every second, 4.5 babies are born, and 1.8 person dies every second. So from the time we started our presentation, a lot of babies have been born, and a lot of people have died so far. All right, so pumpkin facts. You'll know why I talked about that in a few seconds. So pumpkin fact, the production of pumpkin in the United States is more than 1.5 billion pounds annually. That's the production. If you see a chart on the right-hand side, Texas had the highest production in 2020. California had the highest production in 2018. Illinois happens to had the largest size of the farmland out of all the states. And so in Texas, over 15,214 farms, they were valued at over almost $30 million for production value in 2020. $30 million. Okay? What did we say the world population? 7.98. It's not 8 yet. In a few days it will be.
Almost 8 billion.
7.98. Okay. Alright, 10% of the world population, or 790 million people, live on less than $2.15. $2 a day. And that is our poverty line as of last month. And that is extreme poverty. You know what that means? $2. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. If you say per month, let's say $60, you have to pay bills, all the expenses, housing, transportation. Can someone survive with that $60 a month or $2 a day? So what happens as a result of that? A lot of people go to bed without any food. Okay? Estimated 350 million children live under extreme poverty. How? Because children are fully dependent on adults. They are so vulnerable, they cannot do anything. They cannot survive on their own. They are fully dependent in terms of housing, education, nutrition, everything, right? Why are we talking about world population all of a sudden in the middle of Halloween? Any idea? Because the Halloween costume costs minimum of $20 and $45 plus. If someone has to spend something on Halloween costume, $20, and someone somewhere in the world cannot survive for more than $2. You see a comparison? What was the word that I asked you to remember between this? Choice. It is our choice. Do we want to buy something or do we want to spend something towards underprivileged world? If that has not affected anyone yet, let's see something else. In Southern Asia, so we're talking about Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and some parts of Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Somalia, Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda. There are 58 million people who are living below that international poverty line. So we talked about $2 poverty line. They are below, especially as a result of the pandemic. Okay? 1 billion children worldwide are multi-dimensionally poor. Now this point is for all the children and the youth over here, especially. I hope you're all paying attention and listening. All the children and all the youth. You know what multi-dimensionally poor means? They have no access to food sometimes, no housing, no education, no clean water, nothing. All right? I want you guys to do something today. I want all the kids who are sitting here today, all the youth who are sitting here today, when you go home, I want you to open your closet, open your drawer, and look at the clothes that you have. And say Alhamdulillah from the bottom of your heart. Because there are children in this world who don't have anything, who wear the same clothes throughout, like a month I'm talking about. They have patches on their clothes, and they have clothes have holes. And I'm not saying this because I read it or I heard it. No, I'm saying this because I lived in Africa for 4 years. And I have seen poverty. And I have seen those children that will break your heart. There are two extremes there. Either they are too poor or they are too rich. And the poor children have no clothes sometimes. Big patches that the parents cannot even afford to stitch those patches. If an apple, and I saw this from my eyes, an apple, half-eaten apple fell down from someone's hand. And this was on a sand. And so many children ran towards that apple because they were hungry. And the child who picked it up was his Eid, for example. And because there is no clean water supply, they just washed it from whatever water was available. And the child finished that apple. And that's how they survive. They don't even have proper housing. And so if the wind blows, whatever they have the shelter with, it blows with it. When it floods, there's water. And so now they have nothing. This is the condition of the world. And I want you guys to have gratitude in your attitude. I hear a lot of children, they say, today was my worst day. Haven't you heard that? Right? They say, today was the worst day. How could it be? It's the worst time. We all heard that statement from everyone, right? Yeah. So let me tell you something. Your worst day, you give that day to those children, and that will be their best day of life. So please say, Alhamdulillah, be thankful to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with. And so, one child dies every 5 seconds. So a lot of children have already died. How did they die? Because of poverty. Parents have no money to, if they are sick, they die because there is no money for health care. There is no money. Education is actually secondary. They don't even think about education. If they don't have clean water, their housing, there's nothing. What are we talking about education for, right? So there's a lot going on in the world. And on the other side of the world, there's 3.3 billion spending on Halloween last year. This year, this number is expected to reach 6 billion. Where are they spending? Costume, decorations, right? Pets costume, adult costumes, right? Candies, pumpkin carving, parades, and parties. We have to bring the word back in our with us. Choice. It's our choice. Do we want to spend that $2 for even buying a simple small pumpkin that may not even cost $2? Or do we want to spend that, at least give it to someone, right? So that's our choice that we're leaving here today with. Now let's take a look at some Islamic perspective. So does Halloween look like a trick or treat?
Treat.
It's a treat still. It's a trick. Whose trick is that? Shaitan's trick. Don't go that far. Shaitan's trick. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Yusuf, Inna shaitana lil insani aduwwun mubin. That means shaitan is an open enemy to men. And so living in this world, this land, it's very natural. We could be under pressure because everyone is doing it in the society. We could be confused because of that. Which path do we take? Should we even distribute candies? Is that safe to do it? Should we even avoid the parades but small party? It's very confusion going on right now, especially in the Muslim community. And so therefore a lot of these can make us weak. Human itself is weak, right? So making a decision could be a little weaker as well. And so that is a very normal right now in a Muslim community and a Muslim household. Becoming a weak inside. Because how could you not give sweets to the kids who are coming at your doorstep? How could you not participate in the parade that's going on in our school? It makes us weak and it makes it very, very confusing, right? It's a common fact. It's open. So when things like that happen, we have to remember that it's a choice of right and wrong. What is right and what is wrong. It's also a choice where it is controversial, it's in the middle. And that gray shaded area, right? So we're going to talk about all of that, inshallah, today. For those kids, for those youth who remember the Venn diagram, I want you to focus the right and the left, right? Right decision and a wrong decision, and also the overlapping Venn diagram, which is the gray shaded area. And so when we talk about right and wrong, there is a term called ethics. So when you look at the ethics of ethics basically is our actions that are right and our actions that are wrong, ethically wrong. And what dictates these actions is, it's number one is the law and regulations, right? It's ethical to do it, it's not ethical to do it. If somebody committed a murder, he has to be in jail. That's ethical to do it. Unethically, we can leave him alone, right? The other part of ethics is the decision that comes out from us as a common sense, as something that our conscience will tell us. If you're going somewhere, somebody needs help, you go and help them out. You don't have to, but you will go because you're ethically responsible for doing that. So laws teach us about ethics, and our own conscience and common sense teaches about ethics and unethical things. But as a Muslim, how do we know about ethics? How do we know about right and wrong actions? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches. And where do we look? We look in the Quran. And we look in the Sunnah. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, O you who believe, enter perfectly in Islam by obeying all the rules and regulations of the Islamic religion, and follow not the footsteps of Shaitan. Verily, he is to you a plain enemy. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is repeating time and time again in the Quran about enemy. Like when Rasulullah went to Medina, this is reported by Anas ibn Malik. When Rasulullah went to Medina, he saw Ansar celebrating something. And so he asked them, what are you celebrating? Like, what is the significance of this? And they told him it's a game or something that they were celebrating. You know what Rasulullah told them? He said, Allah has replaced these days with two better days, Eid al-Adha Eid al-Fitr, the day of sacrifice and the day of ending the fast or breaking the fast. And so these are the only celebrations or practices that we have to follow. We don't even need anything, right? Why do we have to go for what the world is doing? Why not look at what our religion has given to us? And so it is blessing for us to be a Muslim, alhamdulillah, right? It is, Islam is a complete and perfect religion. And so therefore we have to be thankful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with this religion. And so we have to control our nafs. And one of the things that I have to practice and we all have to practice is basira. Basira came from an Arabic three-letter root word, basar, ba, sad, ra. Basira means to have an insight, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Samir Basir, right? Basira is to have an insight of something, have a wisdom of something, wisdom in making decision, wisdom in understanding something, wisdom in following something. So we all need to practice that basira because again, it is our choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the choice to do that because it is a complete deed. So, so the same way, we don't have to blindly follow the practices of other religions because our religion is a complete religion. It gives us every answer that we need, okay? And so, for example, blindly following the custom, there is an example. One time my son was wearing jibba, the toque and the topi. And so someone said to him, nice costume. Well, that's not a costume for us. That should be our identity, right? And so, some non-Muslim celebrations are very difficult for Muslim parents, right? Because Halloween happens to be the second largest celebration after Christmas. And so second largest profitable celebration after Christmas as well, okay? So when that happens, Muslim parents have a lot of choices to make. And becomes very difficult because either we follow or we resist, okay? And one factor that made things so difficult for everyone is social media. And that is a topic of its own. We can spend another day on that one. But social media is something, and peer pressure. When people say, oh, it's trending, right? It is cool because we have to do it. Everyone is doing it. It is an in thing in social media. And so the latest terminology is coolness of society. As long as you fit in that society and you are cool, you are fine. How about the coolness in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? Because the coolness of the society will keep changing. Today is something, tomorrow is something else. So the practices will change. So how many times do we have to change everything, right? And so save ourselves from falling into and following the practices of the coolness of society. So one must have a firm knowledge of teachings and rulings of religion and belief. So what do we have to do? We have to, number one, as parents, first of all, we have to mold ourselves into the Islamic framework. And that's when we are able to have a positive view or a role model, being a role model for our children. And it's not that for our children only, it's for the next generation. You know how the ripple effect is? You throw a stone in the water and then it spreads out. That's exactly how it is. So we have to change ourselves, mold ourselves to practice our religion better, understand Quran and Sunnah better, understand the teachings of Quran and Sunnah better. And when that happens, we teach our children and their children will automatically. It is going to be a generation awareness and generation-based knowledge effect, okay? So last week we actually had scholars here, teachers from UK and Masjid Bilal, and they were talking about setting up Maktab program. Maktab program is after school program because it's so imperative, so essential for our children to be connected with Islam, right? Be connected with understanding Quran, Sunnah, Adab, Ikhlaq, Fiqh, all of those topics. It is so imperative these days, right? And so we need to instill the love of religion in their hearts and the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, teachings of Rasulullah. It is imperative to do that these days. Rasulullah said, for people who actually imitate the practices of different faiths, and such as wearing costume and going around in parades, the message of Allah, the message of Rasulullah said, whoever imitates a person is one of them. right? That means we are recognized as one of them because just we are following their practices. And remember that Rasulullah SAW also said, on the day of judgment, you will be with the one you love, right? So we have to be very careful of the practices that we follow. We're going to be with the one we love. And so we have to be very careful with that. So we talk about the purpose. What is our purpose in life? What is our purpose in life? As a human or as a Muslim, what's our purpose?
Isn't it to follow Allah and the Quran and the Prophet's teachings?
Yes, follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to obey His commands, right? And so if the teaching is about that, we should be able to now at this point connect the dots. Between our segment 1, which is Halloween, connecting the dots is very imperative right now. So what Halloween taught us, what the Celtic gods taught us, is all of those practices of costume and trick-or-treats and all of that pumpkin carving and everything, right? And the second segment of that, when we talk about the poverty and the lowest level that they live with, right? And so at this point, if you try to connect the dots, don't you feel that Halloween becomes one of the worst celebrations for Muslim to celebrate or Muslim to take part in, right? It completely. And so, are we making our children happy by sending them? Because if the children want to have fun, we send them. But we are not teaching them. You know, children are very smart. If you talk to your child, it's very smart. They have logic. Okay, they understand it. So if they are able to understand that having fun means going trick or treat, at the same time, you can also explain to them that not going to trick-or-treating is better for us. If you instill the love of Islam, if you instill the teaching of our deen to them, mashallah, they are very smart kids, and they will understand that. So not following what the kids want, but molding them in a way that what Allah wants. Okay? So is this the only way to have fun? No, there could be plenty of ways. We'll talk about it in a minute. Are we not responsible for the actions? So if the child wants to do something and you end up doing it, and it is wrong, whose responsibility is that? Our. It's not them, because guess what? Kids depend on us. If they're fully dependent on you, they're not answerable. We are. It's going to become ours. So we can't say, oh, the kid wanted to have fun. No. If there's a parade in the school, the kid wanted to do it. No. You can dismiss them early. Or tell the teacher. They're very open these days. People are aware of that. And you pick that child early or not have you participate in the parade. So it's our responsibility. We will be responsible for our action or their action and their words. And so a Muslim should be a model for others in faith, in practice. So what faith we follow, how do we practice that faith? If we say we are Muslim, but we still participate in something that does not belong to Islam, we are not following our faith correctly, right? And that will show from our behavior, and that will show from our characteristic, okay? And we can't just follow things blindly and imitate other people. So as a Muslim, what becomes our duty? Our duty is to pull our children into the correct teaching of Islam and not let go. Okay, be with them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the people who follow these practices. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, but ataynahum. Should we stop there? That means we have sent down or we have brought down bil haqqi, the truth. وَإِنَّهُمْ لَكَاذِبُونَ. That means indeed they still keep practicing falsehood. So indeed they practice lying. Indeed they practice wrong things. So we have sent down or we have brought down the truth, but they indeed practice falsehood. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the clear sign. He has told us everything. The truth has already come down, but what are we doing? We keep practicing falsehood. We keep practicing something that we are not supposed to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said it so clearly. What else do we need? But over here, if we still have people who don't believe this, or something is unclear, remember I talked about the Venn diagram that there is right or the wrong of ethics, and there is a green shaded area in the middle, which is a doubtful area. If we're still doubtful that maybe some of the parts of those practices are okay to do, the answer for that is here. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and it is reported by Nu'man ibn Bashir Talana. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what is lawful and clear, and what is unlawful is clear, but between them are certain doubtful things which many people do not know. What does that mean? Exactly what we just talked about. There are right things and there are wrong things, and in between there are doubtful things. That area, that gray area. So what do we do about that gray area? Do we go more towards maybe, yes, okay to do, or no, we should not do it, right? That gray area is actually a dividing normal line a lot of Muslim community. And so that gray area is easily answered over here. He said, so he who guards against doubtful things keeps his religion and his honor blameless. So those who guard themselves, that means stay away from the practices that seem not right, they are good. But he who falls into doubtful things will fall into that which is unlawful. So being the act of falling into doubtful, considering something doubtful, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said it so clearly in the Quran, but we still think it is doubtful, then we are going in that fall. Okay? And what happens when we think something is doubtful? It's the evil attempt. And who creates the evil attempt? Shaitan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran about blazing fire. Okay? He said about Shaitan blazing fire. So who will have the blazing fire? Shaitan and? Is the Shaitan the only one? Oops, sorry. I'm sorry. Blazing fire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, Surah Fatir actually, about blazing fire. So Shaitan will be in blazing fire. Who else will be in blazing fire? The followers of Shaitan and the friends of Shaitan. Okay? And who are those? Those who are in the doubtful. The doubtful leads to evil, and the evil leads to Shaitan. And therefore, the followers and shaitans will be in blazing fire. So think about that blazing fire next time when we think about the doubtful and that gray area. So it is not a controversial issue for Muslims at least. For other religions, we don't want to talk about it. But for at least Muslims, we have to understand that something is wrong, something is right. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it. And we have to keep ourselves away from the doubtful things in all matters of life, not just this one. Okay? And so Rasulullah also said the final hour will not come until my followers copy the deeds of the previous nations. Aren't we talking about the previous nations? We are. And so the final hour will not come until my followers copy the deeds of the previous nation and follow them very closely, span by span, cubit by cubit. What is a cubit? Cubit is from your arm to the tall finger. This is cubit. So this is how close we have to be following the practices to be in that final day of judgment. Okay, and so it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to fall under these things. So we have to be very careful. I wanted to bring in some solutions and alternatives and what we can do and what we shouldn't do. Right? These are all suggestions and recommendations because we want to avoid ourselves into something which is not good. So trick-or-treating and offering, right? So instead of that, give your children enough candy at home. 364 days, you can do that. Don't do it on that day, okay? Now, some people say, okay, candy will ruin your teeth. I actually know someone who did this. Put the sign on the door with funny messages like, sorry, no candy. Your dentist will be very upset. Okay, and it works. It worked for her actually. Gather the youth together in your houses, in the park, where the park is going to be cold, but in the masajids.
Teach them why is it wrong to be part of this festival, like what we're doing today. Learn the history, read the stories of the prophet, or discuss other topics. Just enjoy the time together instead of getting them out on the street and doing something. The small children, take them to the masjid, spend time in the masjid or someone's house. Do something, cooking, baking, teaching, small story time, anything. Brainstorm different ideas. A lot of people say, so that the kids are coming to our house and we have to be good hosts, right? That's a lot of people, they argue with that. How can you let someone be out of your house without giving them something? If you really want to give them something, give them fruits maybe. Make pumpkin halwa and give them that to your neighbors or something, right? Take advantage of this opportunity. Make that a dawa opportunity. And I know a lot of people, personally, I know people who have done this. Because, you know, when you set up a dawa table and call people and they don't come, people are already coming to your house. And this does not mean you give them a booklet that they will throw away. Give them the history of Halloween. Relate them to something which is original, that even if they throw, at least they have read it one time. And it goes at the back of their mind, but you did your task. Okay? And then, of course, your own idea is always welcome. And so remember that a lot of people will not agree with this. And so we have to be patient. We have to be kind, we have to be respectful, because we have to do our part and have patience and be kind. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of it, and He knows best. All right, so I have a question. I have to share something with you. There are 100 billion galaxies in the universe. I'm going to repeat that. 100 billion galaxies in the universe. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, is Earth bigger or the sun bigger? Sun is bigger? We all agree with that? So we live on Earth. How many of these Earths can fit inside one sun? Just choose anything.
3 trillion.
3 trillion. Okay. How many Earths can fit inside? 1, 2, 6 billion. Yeah?
1 million?
1 million. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. Yeah. 50,000, little more than that.
1.7 billion?
Little less than. No, more than that. 100 million. 100 billion. I'm sorry. 1.3 million. Wrong number. I'm sorry. 1.3 million Earths can fit inside the sun. Okay? So 100 billion galaxies we have in the universe, and 1.3 million Earths can fit inside the sun. Who did all of that? Who did all of that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Allahu Nuru Samawati wal Ard. He created from these galaxies to tiny flies, fruit flies that we cannot even see. And in between, there are mountains and rivers and forests and humans and animals and all of that. Is it difficult for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create all of that? No. Then why is it difficult for us to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's simple instructions? Why is it so difficult for human to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying when He is the creator of everything that is around us? Right? And so, what was the word again that I asked you to remember? Choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has power over everything. And at the same time, we are responsible for making the better choice for our decision. For making our words, right? For following the words. We are responsible for our words, our action, our practices that we follow. And so I want to end with a story of Sulaiman alayhi salam. It's 2 or 3 more minutes, inshallah, and then we end this, okay? It's a very interesting story, and it is an authenticated story. Sulaiman alayhi salam, we all know, he understood and communicated the language of animals, birds, insects, and jinn. So a court was set up one day. And the case was a bird versus a man. And the case was a bird wanted to drink water near the river. And there were a lot of kids playing. And the bird didn't want to go because the kids would have hurt the bird. Bird waited and waited. Then the kids left and a man came by. And the bird saw that the man had a beard. And the bird thought, he has a beard. He must be reasonable. He must be okay. So bird goes and starts drinking. The man picks up a rock. He sees the bird, picks up a rock, hits the bird. The rock hits the bird, and right away the bird lost the eye. So bird went to Sulaiman alayhi salam and complained. And Sulaiman alayhi salam set up the court. And he asked that man, did the bird do anything to you for you to make that happen? For you to do that? And he said no. And so Sulaiman alayhi salam said, an eye for an eye. And when the bird heard that, bird said, no, I don't want that. I don't want his eye. It was not his eye that deceived me. It was his beard. I want his beard shaved. Because today he deceived me, tomorrow he can deceive someone else. And so the moral of the story is, as Muslim, we are representing our religion. Our words, our actions, our practices must be according to what Quran has told us and what we learn from our Sunnah. Okay? And so we also need to help people out. We also need to make a positive impact on other people. We also need to gain knowledge and make lots of du'as. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to learn our deen the best possible way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and protect us. Ameen. Jazakallah khair everyone for coming here tonight. And if I said anything and if it hurt you, I apologize. Please forgive me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.